I promised Justice Sharma that I'll take as much time I used to take in his court to argue and obtain a positive order. I'll take as much time before all of you. Good morning to all of you and the August gathering here. It is wonderful to see young students, and it is also very important that we are celebrating this momentous day today, where we are celebrating the legal career of Baba Saheb, and someone who was one of the first people to use the word constitutional morality in our polity. And I have, I've gone through, it's great that Professor Saab has laid down the brickway for us. I just have to talk about some key points that I wish to bring before all of you. There can be constitutions without morality. The Nazis had their own constitutions. There can be morality without a constitution. We have morality within our families. There are faith-based, religion-based moralities, institution, the judiciary, lawyers. We have our own sense of what is right, what is wrong, what should be done, what should not be done. The Hindi word for morality is naitikta. So, Samvidhanik naitikta is what we are talking about today. Just as there is something known as Samvidhanik naitikta or constitutional morality, there is also, in colloquial way, गलत होना, किसी के साथ धक्का होना, something is not done as not only as per the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law. Now, what is the spirit? It is not there in the constitution. It is not enshrined elsewhere. But as the judges have propounded in this decade itself, for example, the Sabrimala case, Justice Nariman says the preamble, part 3, that is dealing with the fundamental rights, and part 4 with the directive principles, they constitute constitutional morality. Others have said it talks about, the preamble when it talks of liberty, justice, equality, and and some have also added the word secularism. These are the core principles of this constitutional morality. I would say that very often a word Lakshman Rekha is used. Lakshman Rekha nahi paar karni chahiye judiciary ko. This is very often quoted by public personalities. I also say in the opposite manner. The government of the day, the political executive and the legislature, all of us, we also have our Lakshman Rekhas, but sometimes these Lakshman Rekhas are not on the ground. They're only in our mind. So when you say, was certain act legal but immoral? I would say, for example, the emergency might have been legal but was immoral. A lot of the actions committed by Nazi Germany were legal but immoral. And all those constitutions and all those courts in these countries allowed them at that point of time. It is only in retrospect. Nuremberg took care of Nazi Germany. We had ADM Jabalpur overturned by Justice Chandrachud himself, right? So the time history judges governments, history judges themselves, history judges the people, and one of the ways of doing it is by invoking terms like constitutional morality. I'll go on to in fact say कि अगर संविधान को protect करना है, so there are only two guardrails apart from the text of the constitution. You have the text here, but it doesn't use the word basic structure. So the first guardrail to protect the constitution was in the 70s called basic structure. And I would say that is one reason that our constitution has remained where it is, and we don't have the situation, for example, what was there in Pakistan. It has had 10 constitutions. Bangladesh imported our concept of basic structure. But I think of late, especially in the 21st century, we need a second basic structure, a second protection for the constitution, for our rule of law, for equality, for all the ideals of the preamble. And what is that? To my mind, the only way of protecting it is by having a concept of constitutional morality, where even when the term used in one of the judgment is even when there is a constitutional silence, कि constitution में एक चुप्पी है, do you go ahead and do something which might be legal as per the letter, but you go ahead and do it which is otherwise wrong? No, you have to follow that constitutional morality even while adhering to that letter of the law. Some people, a former Attorney General of this country has called constitutional morality a dangerous trend or a dangerous precedent. In arbitration we have a term called public policy. So it's might called public policy is an unruly horse. So I would say is constitutional morality a unruly horse? कि जो जज साहब बोलेंगे वो constitutional morality है? I would say no. It is not. The reason for that is even when a judge of the highest court is deciding something on the basis of constitutional morality, they are one, bound by the rule of law, that is the constitution. They are bound by the judgments of which have been passed, and they are also bound by the fact that they are acting as constitutional courts. The question then is कि एक संवैधानिक कोर्ट क्या किस नैतिकता के हिसाब से डिसाइड करेगा? A judge sitting there who's had a long career or a bench, will she decide it on the basis of the morality of her family, her community, the institutions she belongs to, the regions she lives in, or is there something all pervasive, a common morality that touches us all? I would argue that without that sense of constitutional morality, you cannot decide questions like 377. You cannot decide questions like Sabrimala. You cannot decide questions like the Nalsa case my friend had spoken about. You can't do it because every second person may tell you ये तो गलत है, दे में से ये हमारे परिवार में नहीं होता, हमारे धर्म में नहीं होता, हमारे इलाके में नहीं होता. But there has to, while you are deciding as a constitutional court judge at the highest level, you have to have an idea of what is wrong and what is right as per constitutional morality. In fact, the reason why this concept is so important is also this: no body, no party, no institution can claim that they know all truth, can claim that they know all that is good for every one of us. If we are settled on that, that means not even an elected government which has all seats in the Lok Sabha or in the Rajya Sabha or anywhere else can say we represent all public will, or we know what is correct for this country. So even the most popular government might be wrong about something. Even the most popular government might need to reflect on what the constitution says or not says. And which is why you need a concept like constitutional morality to have a check on what is, today is moral, was till last year immoral, right? If you can't have something as finicky as public morality to affect constitutional morality, and the judges of the Supreme Court has said so, that public morality, societal morality, familial morality can change with every generation, with every year. Things which were unacceptable 10 years back, 20 years back, or 50 years back are today acceptable. Rights are being granted and they ought to be granted. Our constitution, we must remember, is a living document. It can only be transformative if it remains living. Or we can go back to a rigid constitution, which, for example, Australia has. I think there have been 9 amendments, but you may have a constitution which is rigid and still run a country. You may have a constitution which is very flexible like ours and still have major issues. So a constitutional morality, I would argue, protects not only the silent majority, but also a minority of one. If one person says, I have this right under the constitution, and 130 crore people say, no, we think it is wrong, but the constitution morality, or it allows it, that the social justice allows it, equality allows it, rule of law allows it, then that one person must be granted that right, no matter what the rest of the 130 crore people are saying. The reason for that is even the most weak person is very often in a minority of 1 or a million or whatever. Because you see, I refer to the Nas Foundation judgment. It's a very interesting anecdote which is there, that after the Delhi High Court struck down section 377 and it went to the Supreme Court, Justice Singhvi in 2013, I think he asked, do you know anyone else in this room who is from the LGBTQ community? Do you know? And I don't know anyone. This is what he says. I don't know anyone. My brother doesn't know anyone. So they were talking in their mind of their own morality. They represented their own societal or religious or familial morality. But after 6 years, and they of course go on and upturn the Delhi High Court verdict, but after 6 years we see in the Navte Johar judgment, the finest judges of this Supreme Court held that there is something called constitutional morality that is above the text of the Constitution, and that will safeguard the minority even if it is a minority of one. So till we have the protection of concepts like basic structure, like constitutional morality, even the concept of manifest arbitrariness, कई लोग कहते हैं कि ये western concepts हैं. I would say these are universal concepts. They are universal, and I had earlier in one of the Bar Council events, I had argued that basic structure is one of the best exports we've done to the world. Today, many African countries, many Asian countries have taken in the concept of basic structure and have protected their constitutions and have protected their way of rule of law. So similarly, I am hoping that in this year, when we celebrate Baba Saheb, we no longer think of the Constitution as a top layer. We let it permeate below, and we then export this concept of constitutional morality to all other constitutions of the world, so that no majority, no whimsical majority is able to take over and throttle over the rights of their own people. Thank you very much.